Hello, friends! We are here. Happy Thursday to you, wherever you are joining us from in the world today. I know we have some fellow Nebraskans here in the house today, so shout out to my friends just down the road from me. It is so great to be here. And yes, I'm Kara Plichinich, and we are going to talk about Adobe Bridge today. And I love Bridge, and I remember when it first came out, I did not love Bridge. That was rough in its early days, and I'm thinking that that might be why people don't all use it. But it's evolved since its baby days, and it's an indispensable part of my computer life. So, my goal for today is to share with you why I think it's great and how I use it and how you might find it helpful too. So we are going to get into it, but I have some questions for those of you who I guess I'm curious. In the chat, let me know, are you already using Bridge? Did you used to use Bridge and then maybe you switched to something else? If you don't use Bridge, why do you not use Bridge? And what are you using instead? Because I really don't know of any substitutes. It's just that important of a part of my whole workflow and my world. So let's see. Let's pop into the chat and see what people are saying. Yes, Adrian. Hi, Adrian. Adrian finds it helpful to use Bridge to add alt text to images and have it stick through all Adobe programs. Yes, that is a super amazing feature. And that is on my agenda to mention today. If I somehow forget, remind me. But yes, and that's only been part of Bridge for like a couple years, I think. But those of us who work in the accessibility space, and even those who don't, we should all be doing that and using Bridge to add alt text to our images. And if you work with images in a lot of different places, previously you had to, like, I don't know, keep a spreadsheet of all the different images and the alt text that goes with it. I don't know how anyone would manage that. But now you can actually put that into the alt text in Bridge and it gets baked in to the metadata and travels with an image. So that is super amazing. Yes, Claude says, I'm using Bridge, but not fully, and I hope to learn something new today or tonight. So, yay. Well, welcome, Claude. I hope you learned something new today, too. Bridge is very much my happy place. So, I'm excited to share all the different ways I think you guys will enjoy it, too. Yes. And KU's government operations, Joanne says that they use it because it is visual. Yes, so much, right? And not only is it visual in a way that the native, Finder on a Mac and Windows Explorer on a PC, in a way that they aren't, because Bridge can actually show you thumbnails and previews for all kinds of different file formats that in the regular file browsers on your system, you just see like a little icon. And you can even see more than that. You can actually see several pages into, say, an InDesign document or a PDF using Bridge. So we will get to that. So keep your questions coming. You can pop them in the chat. For those of you who aren't like super sure what exactly Bridge is, let's talk about it. It is, of course, one of the Adobe apps, and it comes with any of the Adobe applications. So if you have, for example, Photoshop on your computer, you also have Bridge, even if you've never meant to install it or didn't know you installed it, it is there. So it sort of comes along with all the other apps, but as we'll talk about in a minute, it's also its own standalone application. So that's pretty cool. And we'll get to that. But one thing that Bridge is not is that it is not Lightroom. So a lot of people will tell me, like, oh, I don't need Bridge because I use Lightroom. Well, as a photographer many, many years ago, I used Lightroom all the time too. And I loved Lightroom. But Lightroom and Bridge are not the same thing, like, not at all. So let me see if I can help you make sense of the difference, right? So Lightroom is a database, whereas Bridge is a browser. So that means things like you have to import your images into Lightroom. And that doesn't mean we're copying them into Lightroom, but we have to index them. We have to keep track of them. We are creating a catalog with links, and Bridge is just a browser. So, what does that mean? Well, here specifically, you guys remember, some of you remember these old card catalogs from the library, right? I loved those things. I don't know why, but I still can't believe that we had like little pieces of paper that would just keep track of all the books on the shelf. And that's what Lightroom does. So Lightroom allows you to process images, and, you can add keywords and all of that stuff in Lightroom. And there's definitely some overlap for sure. The same way there's some overlap between Photoshop and Illustrator or InDesign. But they are fundamentally different beasts. So Lightroom is like a catalog. You keep track of all the pictures on all your hard drives and in your whole system with Lightroom. And you can process them too. But it's mostly a way for you to catalog and index things for archive purposes and for processing purposes and all of that. That is different than Bridge. Bridge is more like a window. It's a browser to the files on your system. So we're not indexing the location of files the same way we do in Lightroom. We are just looking at them. So I really like to think of Bridge as a window to just look at the files on your hard drive. And there's a number of different ways you can view them, and you can work with them and interact with them in a number of different ways as well. But it is really a browser, not a database, not a cataloging system. You can apply and create and filter for keywords and labeling and all of that very type A happy place stuff. I don't really use it that way ever, so I can talk about it briefly, but it's not part of why I use it. I feel like I actually kind of do the bare minimum in Bridge, and that's why I love it so much, because I don't have to make keywords for everything. I'm just able to find what I'm looking for based on other things. So it's really great. And like the name implies, it's also a connection between all the different apps. So it is the bridge that binds all of Creative Cloud together, if you will. So you can use it to filter, to publish things, to process things, to find things, reformat things. You can build collections. You can export from Bridge. You can even publish to some places. I've never done it, but it's in there. So you can do a lot with it. And for that reason, it is incredibly handy. Okay, and the other thing about Bridge that's also cool is that it is totally free. Like, you do not even have to subscribe to Creative Cloud to be able to fully use Bridge. Like, it's just free. Anybody can download it and use it. And I love that, and I think it is so awesome. So hopefully that answers some of the questions. And let's pop back over to the chat for just a sec and see what's going on. If anybody has any comments or anything to add here. Adrian says, I appreciate being able to place images into so many different applications. Yes. And it's really useful as a designer for literally browsing and dragging and dropping into the different apps, or just placing. And we will take a look at that as well. Let's see. Oh, Teresa's here. Hi, Teresa. I see Teresa's answering questions in the chat. Thank you. It's so hard to be in multiple places at once. Deborah says, yes, I've used Bridge since it was added. It's been a wonderfully easy way to transfer and edit images too. So much I don't know though, right? Well, that's true for all of us and all the things, but that's why we're here, to learn and share and do better. So thanks, Deborah, for joining us. Okay, let's get into Bridge. So here is what Bridge looks like, basically straight out of the box. Let's see if I can put my little face back up here, and I'll move me out of the way because nobody needs to have me looking so big on the screen. Okay, and I'll pop out of the way as needed, hopefully. But so this is what Bridge looks like out of the box, and you know, it can be a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot going on here. The main things to know is that this big area in the center, that's our browser, basically. It's our content window or content panel, as Adobe calls it. And so this is where you can browse different folders. Now, how do you know where you are? Well, one way is to have the path bar on up here across the screen. And I believe that I've reset my workspace to essentials. So the fact that I'm seeing it, the path bar, makes me think it should be part of the default settings. But if it's not, just like in any Adobe application, you can find it by going to the window menu, and here it says path bar. So that will put that up. So like right now I'm looking in my Bridge demo files, and if I want to go to my documents, I can just click to get there up here in my path bar, or I could go to my, hard drive. But another thing that's really nice is you can go back. So if I hold Command or Control and I tap the left arrow key, that will take me back to whatever folder I was viewing just a minute ago. So even if I jump from this folder to my downloads folder and then I'm like, no, I want to go back, I can just tap those keyboard shortcuts and I'm right back where I was. So that's great. That's different than going up out of a folder and up and up and up. That's really just going back to whatever view you had a minute ago. And of course, you can go up a level by hitting Command or Control up arrow. So I find that really helpful. One of the things that they introduced in the past year or something, year or two maybe, is the ability to have multiple content windows open at a time. So you can see here, it's telling me that I'm looking at the Bridge demo files. That's the folder we're in. But if I want to have another folder open at the same time, I can click the little plus, and now I'm just looking at my downloads folder. And for whatever reason, it put my libraries here too, which I just don't. No, thank you. So I'm going to close that. But so now I have two different folders open at once, and I'm viewing all the contents of that folder. And you'll notice that we see beautiful thumbnails. And of course, you can set this up to display, how you want, and you can make the previews bigger or smaller, and you can have list view and all of that kind of stuff. But we are seeing previews here for JPEGs, for PSDs, for GIFs, for, I think I have some MP4 files in here somewhere. Maybe not. Definitely in my downloads. But you can see actual previews for all of those documents. And oh yeah, here's a movie file. And if we make the thumbnails a little bigger, here it is. You can see that as I just mouse across the preview, you can see that it's actually scrubbing through the video. So it is such a great way to just see what the heck you have here without having to work too hard. Let's see. I thought that I had some. Here's a PDF. So here's another thing that's great is if I want to see a larger preview of any of these, this is why my thumbnails, I keep them small, because if I want to see a big preview, you can just select the image and tap the space bar. And you get a huge preview, and you can tap the space bar again to get out of the preview. Now, not all files preview. Like, I don't think the movie files don't pop up large on your screen like that, but they do preview in the sense that you can just kind of mouse over them. Here, I'll make the thumbnail bigger so you can see. But if you just mouse across the preview, it's playing. So hopefully you guys can see that. Okay, but here, for example, is a PDF. This is one of my handouts from CreativePro Week. And if I tap on it, I'm getting this large screen preview, and then I can actually use my arrow keys while I'm in the preview to scroll through the pages of that PDF. So super, super awesome. And again, I can tap the space bar to get out of there. And if we go to the filter panel, so again, the filter, I believe, is open. I reset my workspace to what's called Essentials, which is the default. Let me get my face out of the way. And over here, there is the filter panel. And just like all the panels in all the apps, you can find them under the window menu. So if you're looking for the filter panel and you don't see it, you can just find it there. But in here, I can twirl down file type, and we can see a dynamic list of all the different file types that are in this folder that we're looking at right now. So let me find an InDesign document. I thought I had one in there, but who knows what I've done with it. So here is here is a document from CreativePro Week, and you can see, let's actually find a better example. Let's go to, we can show the document I was just working on yesterday. So this is a handout I'm making for our Design and Marketing Summit coming up next month. And by the way, at the end of our webinar today, I'm going to have a promo code that you can use to save $100 off your registration. But this is an InDesign document, and we're just previewing it here in Bridge, and I can tap through it with my arrow keys. Now you'll see it's only previewing the first page, 2 pages. And that is because of a setting, a preference that actually is in InDesign. So I believe the default preview is just 2 pages. So if you create a lot of InDesign documents and you want to be able to preview additional pages within Bridge like this, then you want to change that setting in InDesign preferences. Okay, so that was kind of a lot so far, but we're just really getting started. So that's the main window over here. And then, there's other panels like the keywords and metadata and all that stuff. And I don't think we have to really get into that. You know how that stuff works. In the keywords panel, you can apply and create keywords, which you then filter for in the filter panel, not actually in the keyword panel, which I find confusing. But I don't use keywords, so I'm not I'm not worried about it. There's the metadata panel. And so all of this is dynamic. So when you click on a file, you'll get all the information here. And by the way, we were talking about the alt text option. I thought it was here it is. If you are someone who really wants to take advantage of this amazing feature in Bridge, you can add the alt text to the metadata of an image by selecting the image. And if you go into the metadata panel and you go into IPTC core and you scroll down, there is a field here called alt text. And then it says in parentheses, it says accessibility. So you can batch this stuff, right? But this is where you would want to put the alt text so that it gets baked into the image and actually travels from app to app with the image. So you don't have to keep track of the alt text in some other way. All right. So yeah, panels, all that good stuff. Let's talk a little bit more about how you navigate this. And I'm going to switch to the workspace that I like to work in Bridge, because like I said, I don't use metadata or keywords. So just like in Photoshop or any of the Adobe apps, you can click the panel menu and then close it. So once you do that and you get everything set up the way you like, you can go to the window menu and create a new workspace. And once you do that, it'll show up here. So I've got one called Kara's Favorite. And when I click on it, it adjusts to look like this. So you can see that I have moved things around a little bit. I'm going to get my face off of there. So I just have my panel here being huge because that's the main thing I'm in here for. I'm not doing keywords and all that kind of stuff. I'm just like finding things. I'm copying them. I'm moving them. I'm previewing them. All that good stuff. And so I want this huge. And then, of course, we have the path bar along the top. And over here on the left, I also have the folders panel. So this gives me access to my whole hard drive and all of my folders. So if I'm trying to find a folder that I somehow don't have access to in some other way here, I can go here. But the main way that I navigate is with my favorites folder or favorites panel. So any folder that you want to add here, you can jump to it really easy. So it's like a shortcut. So here, if we remove my Bridge demo files from favorites, now it's gone. But I can go up a level here so that I grab this folder and I can just drag it into this list wherever I want to put it, and boom. Now I can jump to it anytime with just a single click. So you can see I have, the usual suspects, my downloads, my documents folder, which of course then I can jump pretty much anywhere. My desktop, which is a disaster. We don't look at that. Etc. So I've just got all my quickie links right here, and that's mainly how I navigate. So it's really just my main browser window and then clicking through whatever I'm looking for on the side over there. And that is honestly the bulk of what I do in Bridge. Let's pop over and see in the chat how things are going and what questions you guys have. I'm working up here from the bottom. Let's see. Okay, so Joanne is saying, can you drop the InDesign setting in the chat to turn on? Yes, I will do that in a minute. I'll just show it to you. Because I'll show you how we work with Bridge and some of the other Adobe apps. So that is great. Yes, Dawn. Dawn knows what's up. Dawn's used Bridge for years. Easy way to back and forth. Yeah, the only, I think, shortcoming really of Bridge is that, like any browser application, unless you're paying for like a enterprise industrial solution, you can't like browse massive stuff on like servers that are, elsewhere. So if you're working in a collaborative environment where you're trying to browse files on other people's massive servers, then it's going to be slow and tricky. But that's really the only question that I ever get about Bridge, where I'm like, yeah, I guess it wouldn't work for that. But for your own stuff, and I browse Dropbox here in Bridge too, so it does work with iCloud and Dropbox and stuff. But it wouldn't work for like giant server enterprise solutions very well. So let's see. I see a question in here. Oh, Adrian says, "What? Multiple folders open. I had no idea." Yeah. So true, right? And also actually that reminds me, while I'm thinking of this, I also want to point out that if you are ever, browsing for something in a parent folder and you're like going into all the little kid folders, I guess, and looking for something and then having to back out and then check in another one and then back out. Another thing you can do is actually go up in Bridge to the view menu and you can choose show items from subfolders. And then it's just gonna show you everything in all the subfolders of whatever folder you are in. That is so rad. So I love that feature. It is not sticky, which means that as soon as you navigate away, you will lose that unless you turn it on. And I forget where you do that. Oh, up here in the little panel menu for your content window, you can always show items from subfolders, but I don't recommend it because, that can be a lot of stuff and it can really bog down your system. So I only turn that on from the view menu as needed when I'm looking for something and I don't want to have to manually check every single folder. So that is a good question. A good point. Okay, let's see. I'm going to come back to some of these at the end. I'm just looking at the chat. And Teresa, thank you. She's doing a fabulous job of getting in there and trying to answer stuff. So I'll come back at the end and I'll try and drag through everything and see what else we can get. But I wanted to show you some other stuff. So we talked about the rich thumbnails. There's things you can do, like we'll talk about collections really quick and then we'll pop into InDesign and I'll show you how these things play nicely together. I don't even have my collections panel open, but collections, I guess to talk about collections, we should talk about search because collections are really just like saved searches. So what's cool about Bridge is if you press Command or Control F, then you get the find window and you can search for so many different things in here. It's fantastic. You can search file names, like file size, document types. You can search descriptions. You can search metadata. So I can tell you that I have used this previously to find an InDesign document that I created that I could not remember where it was saved, what it was called, anything about it, except the name of one of the links that was in it, which was a brand, which should have made it easy to just find the file itself, but it didn't. So I searched the metadata here and it was able to find the linked images within that document and find it for me. So it was amazing. And it used to, I haven't tested it since Creative Pro Week, but at Creative Pro Week just this month, it's still June, right? Earlier this month, I know this feature seems to have bugged out, but you used to be able to also search for things like any fonts that were used in a document. So that can also make it easy to find things. That feature seems to have broken at some point, so I'm hoping they'll fix it because that was really great. But that's another option. So you can come in here and you can add criteria. So you can be like, I want to find a Photoshop document that has such and such in the name and that has blankety blank keyword or whatever. So you can kind of build your criteria here and then in Bridge will search for it. So that can be really handy. Then there's this other thing called collections, which honestly I never use, but you might love it. I just don't do this. But there is a collections panel that you can find under the window menu. And I've got mine open down here. And there's two types of collections. There's smart collections and regular collections, which I named dumb collections because I was being ornery. So I'm going to just close that. We'll delete it and make a new one. Okay, so we'll do that first. We'll make a new dumb collection, I guess. But I'm going to click new collection and we'll just call it collection. Plain vanilla collection. Okay, and now I'm going to go to my folder of demo files. And basically, a collection allows you to just group things without moving them on your hard drive, right? So you know how this works, like a virtual copy kind of in Lightroom. But here it's not even a copy, it's just like a reference. But let's say I want to just randomly grab some of these things and I'm going to put them in this collection. I can select them and just drag them over here. And now I have 4 things in this collection, and these could be from anywhere on my hard drive, on any connected drive, on Dropbox, on whatever. So you might use this if you're building a layout, for example, and you want to kind of gather things before you build your piece. And so you're kind of just collecting them. It's just basically a saved search. So that's a plain vanilla collection, but we can also make a smart collection down here at the bottom of that collection panel. If we click this guy, you'll see, oh, hey, this smart collection panel is literally the exact same window as the search window. So you can set up a search here, and then anything that meets the criteria of this search will automatically get put in this new smart collection. So whatever we want to call it, Einstein collection. It's so smart. So things would just automatically get put in there. And that can be great for, whatever kind of project you might be working on. If you always want a certain file with a certain word in the title or a character or something like that, it will just show up there. And so no matter where, how messed up your hard drive is, you'll always be able to find it in that little collection. So that's pretty neat about collections. I'm going to delete these. I can see it's like scanning for stuff and it didn't mean for it to do that. So I don't want to crash it out. Let's look at how we work this with InDesign and some of the other apps. So for example, if I wanted to place, let's just say these 4 images here, if I want to place them in InDesign, I'm just going to select them and then we can choose File, Place in InDesign. And you'll notice that here I have a keyboard shortcut for this. Now, it's a new thing that Bridge lets you create keyboard shortcuts. That did not used to be. That's new. And I was really excited. However, shockingly, the ability to create shortcuts for functions like placing files in InDesign is not part of the shortcuts. Like those parts of the menu are not available to be shortcutted, if that makes sense. So that's weird. Hopefully they address that because that's like the number one thing I'd want to create a shortcut for. So the shortcut that you see here is actually created from the Mac OS. So I made this completely like outside of Adobe's ecosystem to be able to do this. And I don't know if there's a way to do that with Windows. There probably is, but I don't know of it. So hopefully they're going to address that. But otherwise, you can choose File, Place in InDesign and then check this out. Now we're in InDesign and my cursor is loaded and you can see that there's a little number with it. So I've got all 4 files here. And if I forgot what they were, which let's face it, that happens, I can scroll through them with my arrow keys to figure out which one I want to place first. And then, I could place it. And now I've got 3 left. And so maybe I'll make a little grid like this. And then if I tap my arrow keys, I can instantly make a grid. And when I let go, all of those images are in the grid. And then, I can adjust them from there. But that is how easy it is to be able to work between Photoshop and Bridge, or InDesign and Bridge. So you just can bounce back and forth like that. One of the things that I did back when I was a wedding photographer, or anybody doing a lot of layout, photo heavy layout stuff, one of the things I used to do before and since Mini Bridge. Do you guys remember Mini Bridge? It used to be that Bridge operated within Photoshop or within InDesign in its own little panel. And it was just like a film strip, and it was kind of awesome, but then it died. I don't know what they did with it, but this is what I used to do. I would just collapse my bridge kind of like off to the side, like this basically. And then I would have Bridge scrolling over here. And honestly, I would get rid of all my other panels. Like, I don't want to see all this stuff. I would just collapse it and then save this as a separate workspace and call it like, I don't know. There is a workspace called Film Strip, but it's not this, and it doesn't work like this. And bleh. So come up with your own name, but save something like this. And then you can just have Bridge and InDesign side by side and drag and drop. So we can put in another document here like that. And it's super great. Another thing that's great about Bridge is, let me make it bigger back here again. You can sort, of course, you can sort this by any number of ways, file name, file types, blah, blah, blah. But one cool way to sort it is by dimensions. So if you're, for example, working on a layout and you're just like, I need a vertical image, you can instantly sort Bridge by dimensions. And now you'll see that it has grouped all my vertical images together. So it makes it really easy to find what I'm looking for to fit right into a layout quickly. And if you find images in here that look vertical, like this one, but is actually horizontal, you can rotate it in Bridge with a keyboard shortcut, Command or Control in this case, right bracket. And you'll see that not only did it rotate, but then it moved down here to the horizontal section. And that's up here too, somewhere under something. View, edit, rotate or something. Here it is, rotate. Yes. So Command or Control, right bracket, rotates it 90 degrees clockwise, and Command or Control, left bracket, rotates it 90 degrees counterclockwise. Why is that so hard to say? I don't know. But yeah, that's a huge, great feature. So super great for layouts and design stuff. And to answer the question that Joanne had about where this preview setting is in InDesign, you're going to go up to InDesign Preferences, and let's just start with General because I don't remember. I think it's under nope. It is in here somewhere. Advanced type, composition. No. I should have refreshed my memory on this before I mentioned it. But oh my goodness. File handling. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so it's under file handling. Sorry. Here, always save. So you want to turn on this little check to always save preview images with documents. I mean, this is going to affect the file size. So, maybe don't preview all 100 pages of a 100-page document. But here you can set how many pages. And the choices are the first, second, first 5 pages, first 10 pages, or all pages. So I probably wouldn't set it more than 10 because that's a lot. And then that preview will get baked into the file and, it might get kind of bloated, but that is what's in there. And we have good discussions happening here in the chat. Yes, Teresa remembers Mini Bridge, RIP, right? It was great, except that it was like super slow. So I never used it because I always just had my real bridge, Big Mama Bridge, working over here in this like sort of collapsed situation off to the right of my whatever app I was in. But I should also point out, so for example, let's go to Photoshop quick. How do you launch Bridge, right? Because if you've never opened it or you have really like, how do you even get to it? So you have a couple of choices. From any of the Adobe apps, you can find it by going to File, and then it'll say Browse in Bridge. So we can click that, and then, oh, look, there it is. We're in Bridge. So that's one way. But honestly, I use it so much. I use it all the time. Even Bridge is always open on my computer, even if I've shut down all the other apps because, they get hoggy a little bit with file memory and all of that stuff. So sometimes we got to close them down so I can do some other work. But Bridge is always open because I use it all the time. So I actually have mine down here in my dock. And you can see I have my Adobe apps that I use all the time grouped right here. And guess what is the very first in the lineup? Bridge, because that is how much I use it. Okay, so let's talk about some other cool things that, let me just see. Let me see some of the top things I want to make sure to show you. You can label things, you can filter, you can add stars and ratings and stuff to it. But I feel like, if you love that sort of thing, you'll figure out how to do it. It's similar to like Lightroom and all of that. So I don't want to spend time on it. Let's talk about how we can put Bridge to work, because that's what it's here for. So you can do all kinds of stuff. Like, of course, we could rename our files. So if you select some images that you want to rename, up here under Tools, there is a batch rename option. This comes with the keyboard shortcut because that's always been the keyboard shortcut, even before you could make keyboard shortcuts in Bridge. So that's interesting. But yeah, Command or Control Shift R will batch rename. So when you click on that, you can get in here and, design your naming convention and all of that. So that is nice. You can also batch things out to Photoshop. So if I grab like some files right here and I just tell Photoshop I want to process them, let's actually choose like some like these. So I could go up to Tools and come down to Photoshop and look at all these options. You can batch them, which we'll talk about. You can make contact sheets. Image processor is really probably the most useful thing here. Batching is part of the image processor, but not as robust. It doesn't give you all the options that image processor does. So I prefer to use this, but you can do all kinds of neat things. So let me show you image processor real quick. So this kind of pops us over to Photoshop, where it's basically saying, hey, what images do you want to use? Where do you want to save them? How do you want to save them? And do you want to run any actions on them? So I'm going to find a action here called, I don't know what, colorblind. Maybe that'll add an antique tone if it still works. I think this action might literally be 15 years old. So this might not work, but we'll try it. But if you have actions, you want to add your watermark to an image or whatever kind of color treatment, you can select the action. And then here, when we click run, it is going to run all of those files. And now we'll go back to Bridge, and it put them in this folder here. Oh, I had more things selected than I realized. Maybe. Is that not the right folder? I don't know why these ones are in color. Let's delete this. Anyway, let's delete it and we'll try again and see. Move to bin. All right. So these, we'll try one more time. Tools, Photoshop, image processor. Let's make sure I saved in same location. So it will always put this in a subfolder in that same location. So just so we know. Oh, I think it did run the antique tone. It just wasn't very, we'll run boring sepia, see if that works. There we go. So here you can see, and I had them resize also to very tiny. So they're very tiny now. But so it made this little JPEG folder right within the folder that the files were originally in, and it just processed them and put them right there. So super handy. Another thing that's super handy that I don't know that people mention a lot, I never see anyone talk about Bridge really. So I don't know where else you would find all this, but if we right click on any of these files, I mean, you can open something straight into Camera Raw from Bridge. You can create a zip file straight from Bridge. So if I want to take these 3 files and zip them, I'm just going to right click and say compress. And boom, it put it right here. It calls it archive. So I'd want to rename it something else. But that's it. You can make zips from Bridge. The other thing that's really handy is a lot of times if I'm working in Dropbox, for example, so if I go up here to my Dropbox folder and maybe I find, I don't know, whatever this photo of earrings that I made, and now I'm like, oh, I need to send this Dropbox link to somebody, but I'm not in Dropbox, and Bridge can't give me the Dropbox link from within Bridge. But here's my little shortcut is if I right click on it and I say, reveal this in Finder, because I don't want to have to go look for it in Finder or reveal in Windows Explorer. If I do that, it will come up and find it, and then I can right click on it and copy the Dropbox link and then get rid of Finder because it's not as useful as Bridge. So I think that is a huge key, a huge thing worth knowing. Let's see a couple of other things. Oh, here's something that I discovered just recently because they've updated some things in Bridge. And much like the keyboard shortcuts that they enabled, it's a little bit anticlimactic. But there is this new thing now called workflow in Bridge. So along the top here, you can see the different workspaces. They're also accessible by choosing Window, Workspace, and then you'll see them here, including Film Strip, which puts all of your things in a horizontal film strip. And then I can never figure out how you would change that or like make it vertical if you wanted. I don't know. So this is what I meant when I said this film strip option. I don't think it does. It doesn't do anything for me. But there is a workspace here now called Workflow. Oh no, that's the window. We want to go to the workspace called Workflow. And this sounds really exciting, but it's kind of like, I don't know what the big deal is. So workflow is a way that you can sort of create like an action for some tasks that you do a lot so that you can avoid repeating them. So here you can see my workflow panel that is now open because I'm in the workflow workspace. And there are some preset workflows. But let me just show you how you can create your own. So I'm going to come down here to create new workflow. Going to click on it. These are the 4 things your workflow can do. Batch rename, change format, resize, and apply metadata. I mean, I guess what else would it do except run image processor also from Photoshop, but that's not an option. So let's say what you would do maybe is first you'd want to batch rename. So, okay, So that's going to be step 1 in your little workflow. And you can come over here and give it a name like My Awesome Workflow. And here we can tell it how you want it to be renamed. So we'll call it live stream, and I'm gonna have to drag my windows over. I have to say this is just kind of messy and a lot, but so I'm gonna tell it to rename everything with the words live stream, and then it'll add a 2-digit sequence. And okay, that's good. Then we're gonna add another step. So I'll click to add a new task, and we'll have it change the format. And let's say we wanted to make a ping for everything, and 8-bit ping, and this color space, super. And what else? Oh, and then let's also resize it. We'll say scale it by 50%. Okay. So then we have to save this. We did that. Perfect. So now that shows up over here in our workflow panel. And now I could like take these images and drag them onto my awesome workflow and then click start. And it's showing me it ran them right here, or it's going to run them. It must be stuck on something. And weirdly, it keeps track of all of the, there it goes. It keeps track of all of the jobs that you've run. I don't know why, but so this panel gets kind of messy pretty quickly. But you can see, and it's even like taking forever. I don't know why. That's super great, but that's what the workflow panel is. But I want to show you my actual favorite way to use this stuff. And I'm going to go back to my favorite workspace. And this is something that I just discovered literally at Creative Pro Week when I taught a bridge session at Creative Pro Week, and I was testing stuff. And I didn't realize that this did work because it took a second, but it worked. And then just last night, I was testing it with some other formats and they all worked. So check this out. Let's say, because this is real life, right? So let's say you're working on something and you've got like a GIF here or whatever, and you're like, oh crap, I need this as a JPEG, but you don't want to go launch Photoshop and cook up a JPEG. You can create an export preset. So let me get off the screen here. There is an export panel, and there's a bunch of presets here, including one called PSD to JPEG. And that's what I was trying, like just straight out of the box. And it was really slow and kind of not, I didn't realize it was working. I think it worked. But what worked better is I made my own export preset called Make It a JPEG. And so from the export panel, if you come down here and click plus, you can cook up, whatever you want your thing to be, and then save it. So I just called Make It a JPEG, and I can apply it to any image, including a GIF. So if I right click on this GIF and I just choose export to Make It a JPEG, here's that little screen where it's like, hey, look at all the work I've done for you. And I'll click close, and look, it did it right here. That's the JPEG. We can see the GIF and the JPEG. And that works for PDFs. It works for PSDs. It works for Illustrator files, PDFs, even movie and MP4 files. You can just right click on it and say, make it a JPEG, or whatever you want to call your export action preset. And I think that is so great, because that is what always happens is I'm like editing a video or something and I need a JPEG version of who knows what file. And I'm like, ugh, I don't want to launch Illustrator or InDesign or whatever to do that. So I think that is massive. Yes, I'm just plugging. I'm looking here. Adrian says, that they never noticed the export tab. You feel that Adrian feels silly. Don't feel silly, Adrian. We all, I mean, look at the screen. Like, it's bonkers how much stuff's on the screen. How can you see it all or notice it all? I don't know. There's a lot. But yeah, just poke around. So let's see here. We'll pop into the chat and see if there's any like burning questions. I'm working from the bottom up because otherwise I'll just get super lost. Bruce is mentioning filter plugin. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, you can filter. There's a filter panel where you can filter stuff. And I saw Teresa also mentioned there are actually buttons for rotating images. I just forget because I always use the keyboard shortcut. But yeah, so like here's another image that should be rotated. So if you select it, and you can of course select multiple images at once, but if you select it, then the buttons become active up here so you can rotate it. And that might change your sort depending on, how you've got it sorted. Right now I've got by dimensions, so that will shift. I usually sort by date modified. So that might shift it as well, because that change then gets baked into the image. So it's nice. Then if you open that image up in Photoshop, it will be rotated. Like, it's just rotated now. It's not just like a rotated preview. It's actually rotating the file. So that's really nice. Oh, let's see. Oh, I see. You guys were talking about the Camera Raw being like a plugin for Bridge and Photoshop and everything. If you guys have Camera Raw questions, Teresa's your person for that, not me. But I'm so glad she's here to answer these questions. So what else? Oh, like Adrian's asking about Camera Raw, saying, I'd love to learn more about it. I don't use it as much as I could. Yes. And Teresa makes a good point. Teresa would be good to ask about Camera Raw. Maybe Teresa, you could do like a live stream on Camera Raw. And I could help you. I can like produce it for you. That would be really fun. And Teresa points out that she likes the film strip panel, but made small and below the content panel. So of course, remember that you can move panels around. So that's a good point. Just like in any of the Adobe apps, you can dock things and move them. So you just drag and drop and move them around wherever you want and make Bridge your own and then save that workspace. And can you show how to see the contents of an InDesign document from Bridge? Yes, I'll review that again. It's the same as, well, here's a PDF, but it's the same. If you click on any of the thumbnails here and tap the spacebar, you get a large preview. And I believe the size of the preview is also configurable in whatever program you authored the document in. So like this is a PDF, but the InDesign documents work the same way. You tap the space bar and it makes a larger preview, and then you can use the arrow keys to arrow through it. And when you reach the end of the preview, so, oh my gosh. Yeah, there. Then it'll jump, if you arrow again, it'll jump to the next file. So you can see we thumbed through this one and then it jumped to this next. So, that's how the previews work. That is so helpful. Teresa says, Bridge is the first app to open at the start of every workday. Yes. I would say I don't even ever close it. Unless it's crashing, because, sometimes it crashes. But that is because I am like putting it through the paces. And so, yeah, sometimes I do have to restart it. But other than that, it is always open. Adrian. That's hilarious. Yes. Make Bridge your bee for bestie, right? You mean bestie? That is awesome. And Deborah says the Camera Raw engine is the same in Lightroom, Bridge, and Photoshop. Yes. I do know that. So that is true. So if you are a big Camera Raw fan, you can still love and use Camera Raw directly from Bridge. And it'll work just like you expect. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's like so my favorite like burning things. Um, you can export contact sheets from Bridge. And I was so excited to show you, but I also noticed at Creative Pro Week that feature seems to have broke down a little bit, and it actually spits out an error message now. So maybe someone from Adobe is watching and they'll get on that. But as a photographer, I loved that feature a lot. When they added it. Before they added it, I used to have to run a script. So you can install scripts in Bridge too. And there used to be some great script. It was called like Contact X or something. And I would use that to make contact sheets of all of my portrait client stuff. And anyway, then they added a PDF contact sheet export panel, and it's in the output workspace. And it was awesome. And you could literally select your images, tell it you want to output to PDF, and like design your contact sheet and choose the font and how the file names would be displayed or if they'd be displayed and all that stuff. And it was like an instantaneous preview, and then you could just generate it and it would spit it out as a PDF or whatever. But it's not working right now, so I can't show you that. Yes, this is a good point. Larry is saying that sometimes after a Bridge crash, you have to purge the cache. And somehow I learned at some point when Bridge like mega crashed, I learned that if you hold down the Option or Alt key and maybe some other keys, I'm not sure. We'd have to Google this, but I believe it was holding down the Alt or Option key while you click to relaunch it would purge the cache. So if you ever have trouble with that, you can try that. But yeah, every once in a while, the cache just needs a purge. And you can manage your cache settings in Bridge preferences. So if we go to Bridge and we go into our, oh wait, that's Bridge settings. You can edit Camera Raw preferences from Bridge, or you can just edit Bridge preferences in something called settings. So here you can go in here and manage your cache. There's a cache option setting and then cache management. So, if you're having a lot of trouble with that, get in here and maybe have it purge cache more frequently so it's not crashing. But this is so fun. Oh, Adrian, thank you. Adrian's got to go, but many thanks. Oh, I'm so glad that you could join us. And we're probably at time anyway. But this has been super fun. Thank you to Teresa for joining me in the chat and being so helpful and a wonderful resource. And yeah, this is great. I am loving that we're doing these every month, at least right now. Maybe we could do more in the future, but maybe we can get Teresa to do a Camera Raw session. The other thing that I want to let everyone know is that next month, here's the promo code. You can save $100 off our event next month with the code livestream. And I'll put that back up in a minute. But I wanted to show you, dun, 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 dun. I wanted to show you this. Yeah, so next month we have our Design and Marketing Summit. It's happening online. And if you do design work and do any kind of marketing stuff, this event is for you. We're going to be learning about all kinds of cool stuff to do with InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, Canva, and Express. And it's going to be a good time. And you can save $100 with that promo code live stream. So if you go to creativepro.com/events, you can get signed up and I will see you there, and Teresa will be there, and it's going to be a super good time. And I'm teaching a session about animating things in Photoshop. So no experience with animation required. So I think that's it for me today. Thank you to everybody for being part of this. And yeah, We will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.